Ali, you're muted.
Sorry, I thought I'm still not used to this muting thing. Good evening, everyone. Welcome. We're going to get started in just a minute. We're going to give it just a minute or so for people to get signed on before we get started. In the meantime, we have just some info on the screen for you to read. If you have any technical issues, you can put those into the chat and our team will help you navigate any tech issues you might have. Because we are in webinar mode right now, your camera and mic are muted. So we can't see or hear you, but you should be able to see and hear us. So that's normal. And if you have any questions, just feel free to throw those into the chat. As you think of questions for our speakers tonight, feel free to add those to the Q&A box, which is at the bottom of your screen. So it looks like we've got most of our people in out of the waiting room and you're here. So thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Allison Jessing. I'm the head of adult curriculum at Howard County Library System. And I'm going to get us started tonight with a thank you to our partners for tonight's event, Leadership Howard County Community College, and our sponsor, the Friends and Foundation of Howard County Library System. I also want to thank our bookstore partner, Books with a Past. We'll drop a link to their site into the chat here in a minute. Copies of Own the Arena can be purchased online from Books with a Past. You can pick them up at their store in Savage, or you can borrow it from the library. We have several copies on our shelves here. Because we're in webinar mode, your mics and camera are muted, but share your questions in the Q&A feature, and any questions you might have on tech, just send in the chat and we'll help you. Following the program tonight, you're going to receive an email survey from us, and we really value your thoughts and feedback. So thank you in advance for taking a moment to complete that survey. I'd also like you to take a lunch break with us starting on April 6th. We're partnering with Hoko Palazzo for a 4-part lunch hour series to celebrate National Poetry Month. And we'll have poets once a week doing a half-hour poetry corner as a way to kind of reset halfway through the day. I'll drop a link to that series in the chat and hope you'll be able to join us. Our moderator and interviewer for this evening is Stacy Hunt, President and CEO of Leadership Howard County. Together with staff, board, and alumni, of which I'm one, Stacy leads an organization dedicated to developing community leadership and positive impact through its signature Premier program and an active organization of alumni. Stacy's a graduate of Auburn University, where she received a Bachelor of Science in Marketing and Business Administration, and she's a board member of the National Association of Leadership Programs, the Howard County Library Board of Trustees, the Horizon Foundation, and she chairs the University of Baltimore Certified Public Manager Program Advisory Board. She's also a founding partner of the Board Bank and belongs to numerous advisory groups that serve our community. In 2015, she was named to the Maryland Daily Record's list of top 100 women, and in 2016, she was awarded the Smart CEO Bravo Award. In 2017, she was named to Howard County Women's Hall of Fame for her longstanding service to mentoring women in their roles of community service. So thank you so much, Stacy, for moderating our program tonight. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you to introduce our special guest.
Well, Ali, thank you so much for inviting me to do this evening. I'm very honored to be able to be a part of this great discussion. And so I have the pleasure and the honor this evening to welcome and introduce Katrina Adams. She is the former chairman and president of the United States Tennis Association and the first Black and the youngest person to ever serve as president, chairman, and CEO of the organization. She also serves as vice president of the International Tennis Federation, the ITF. And as an accomplished professional player, she previously competed for 12 years on the Women's Tennis Association Tour, winning 20 career double titles and reaching the quarterfinal or better in doubles at all 4 Grand Slam events. She also spearheaded outreach to underserved communities of color and was named the chairman of the ITF Gender Equality in Tennis Committee in 2018. And Adweek and Forbes both named her one of the most powerful women in sports, and she was featured in Ebony Magazine's Power 100 list. And she's also the executive director of the Harlem Junior Tennis and Education Program. So please join me in welcoming Katrina this evening.
Hi, how are you?
Glad to have you with us. And so I'm going to jump right in because we've got lots of wonderful things to discuss this evening. So your book, just want to make sure everybody, remembers what it looks like. The Own the Arena. It starts in a very unusual and powerful way with the 12 match points. The first point is own the table. And can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, certainly. First of all, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here, and I thank all of you who have tuned in to listen to this evening. Um, Own the Arena is really about whatever space you want to be your arena. And when I talk about owning the table, for me personally, I don't just want to have a seat at the table. I want to own the table. Doesn't mean I have to be the chairman at the table, but it means that I need to be knowledgeable. I need to have presence. I need to be heard. So it's really about how you show up to your meetings and that you're and how you're engaged in the conversation as opposed to just kind of sitting back and let everyone else have something to say but yourself. So that's what I mean by own the table.
Fantastic. I'm going to bounce around a little bit between some of the tennis, analogies that you use to build on, and also just some of the pure, great leadership insights that you have. So, within the tennis arena, you have been very successful during your career. You had 20 doubles wins, and you were ranked number 8 in the world. And so, how did your on-court experience translate or inform your leadership style?
Tennis is a great sport, and it's a sport that really teaches you life skills. It teaches you how to manage your time, how to deal with adversity. It builds your self-esteem, your self-confidence. It teaches you how to be tactical and build strategy. And those are all the things that we need to be able to succeed in business. And from those experiences and being in tough situations and matches at critical points in the match and having to rise to the occasion, those are the skill sets that I have been able to rely on in the boardroom and in a business situation, in understanding when to be calm and understanding when to be a little more assertive in the conversation to get the job done.
Awesome. You mentioned the importance of your personal board. And can you talk about how that impacted your leadership growth? And what should developing leaders look for in their personal boards? And what is the value for each of us to develop one?
For me personally, I know what I don't know. And, every leader tries to be in everything, and we're just not that person. We don't have all of the skill sets and the knowledge that it takes to run every department. That's why we have a staff and we have those that have the experience and the expertise to get the job done in those certain departments. And so I have my own personal board. It's a group of friends or colleagues that are experts in certain areas that I can pick up the phone and call or send an email or lean on to have a conversation, a more in-depth conversation, perhaps about a direction that I want to, a lane that I want to take that is foreign to me, but I think it's great for the organization or the company, and to get their advice. And these are people that will, flat out say, nope, that's not the direction you should go, or you might want to rethink that, or you're spot on. And I think everyone needs to have that personal board, if you will, to be able to lean on from time to time. In the book, I may talk about it as being your network, owning your network, and that network are the same type of people, but the network may be more of colleagues that in your same field or across the industry that you're also able to pick up the phone and have a chat with, and maybe collaborate and do some comparison. So they're two different things, but still both very important for each person to have.
Sounds like you really kind of curated this growth of what this personal board was for you over time. Has it evolved and changed too,
It's
as your
definitely
needs
changed.
and experiences have changed?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm an athlete. I come from an athletic world, and going into the business world, that was really relatively new to me. I mean, my being a professional athlete is a business in itself. You're your own CEO, so you have to figure out how to manage your career. Not everyone has a team of agents and nutritionists and massage therapists, et cetera. Only the top players. But if you're in the middle of the pack, you have to figure out how to navigate that yourself. So I have started building this personal board many years ago, and it has expanded over the years, but not too large a number. I mean, it's really probably 7, 8 people that I can lean on. And I sometimes I don't lean on them at all in a year for a business purpose, but none other just to reach out and say hello.
Awesome. So you just, we're talking about how you may tap into them for things. I think that this next question is going to bring up some of how that may have occurred. So in 2018, the U.S. Open's women's final between Serena Williams and Naomi Osaka was a match that was wrapped in controversy, and you personally encountered some social media backlash. So what advice or learning would you share with others who are in leadership roles stemming from that experience?
Well, it was definitely a first for me to be under that what I would say a microscope. I felt, very, very minuscule in the grand scheme of things of what occurred and unfolded towards the end of the match, and then at the end of the match with, let's see, I had maybe 20,000 people booing. It's okay. It's never happened before, and hopefully it won't happen again. But it was really a matter of me staying calm in that moment because I didn't really understand what was happening and why they were booing at me. I didn't do anything. But it was really about, when the mic came over to recognize the United States Open championships, then the crowd booed. So before I even said a word, fast forward, trying to navigate that situation and come up with the right words and really try to calm the crowd down and hopefully give some comfort to the players in that moment. In my speech, some words were misconstrued by what I was referring to with the actions on the court and what kind of took away from what was a great match or could have been a great match. And it was misconstrued for me referring to who won the match. And so I got a lot of backlash on social media. I had a lot of interviews the next couple of days. And, the funny thing about it is that people were accusing me of being biased towards Serena because she was Black. And I said, did you happen to look at both the players up there? There was no bias. They're both Black women. So why would I be, really trying to lean more towards Serena in that situation when I'm all about being inclusive? And so the learnings were, stay calm in the moment and make sure that you stand by your words. I stood by my words for what I said because I knew what I meant. The majority of the people knew what I meant, but it's always going to be some naysayers out there that are looking for things to be wrong or incorrect or, steered towards the way that they want it to be. And you just have to keep moving forward.
And you share in your book that it sounds like you were able to reach out, especially to Naomi, and be able to make sure she understood what you meant, which is truly one of the most important parts of that whole controversy, wasn't it? Is for you to solidify.
Yes. I mean, she just won her first Grand Slam title, her first
Right.
US Open title. And under the circumstances, I mean, she was distraught after winning as opposed to jumping for joy.
Yeah.
And so prior to the trophy ceremony or even after, so I wanted to make sure that she knew how proud I was of her. I did know her, but I wanted to make sure that she was okay with me and that she didn't take my words to be against her or negatively in any way, of which she did not. And so life goes on.
Yeah. And it's a learning lesson for everybody, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So after you became president, this happened while you were president of the USDA, and you faced a lot of pressure of just being the first, as I mentioned in the introduction about being the first former player, the first Black person, the youngest person. And what did that feel like? How, talk about that pressure a little bit.
Well, I think it's another situation where my profession kicked in, understanding what the pressure is. Billie Jean King always said pressure is a privilege. So being in that situation, in that role, was a privilege. But I also took great care of it. I took great care of it because I knew not only was I representing myself, my family, my organization, but I was really representing an entire culture of people of color, and African Americans in particular, because no one before me that looked like me was in that role. And so I was definitely going to stand out like a sore thumb in most crowds. in that arena, in that space. And I had to make sure that everything that I did was spot on, that I was overly prepared for my meetings, for presentations, for speeches, whatever it was, because there's always that one person that's looking to slight you in some way. And I wanted to make sure that I wasn't going to make that mistake. If I did, I was going to know how to rectify it, because I didn't want to scar the opportunity for the next one behind me. And that's still my hope. I'm hopefully in the immediate future, in the coming years, there will be someone else to follow that looks like me.
So building on that, beyond when your leadership at USTA, you were also still often the only woman, the only Black woman, both on the tennis courts prior and in the corporate boardrooms that you've also served on. And you mentioned that it's important to bring your full true self into your conversations, culture and all. And I loved that you brought that up. But it took many rich and varied experiences for you to recognize how important it is to show up authentically. Can you talk a little bit about that and share how that shaped your approach to leadership?
Well, it's a matter of owning your identity and owning your culture, and be proud of what you bring to the table. I'm at the table for a reason, and it's really because of what's here. But as of late, a dear friend of mine always said, "Kat, take advantage of your advantage." And the advantage right now in leadership roles or in the boardroom is being a woman or a woman of color.
Yeah.
And I fit both. And so it's time for me to take advantage of my advantage. And so what I look at when I've been approached to be on certain boards, whether it's a board of directors or advisory board, et cetera, am I the first or am I the only one? And what does that mean? And what is your reason for inviting me to be in the boardroom or on the advisory board, et cetera? And is it something that if I accept this, will I be opening the door for others to come behind me? Because I don't want to just be there and not have a say in who's coming next. And I think that's something that we as women in particular have to make sure that we are advocating and sponsoring that next leader to sit along the side of us. And so be it if they go ahead of us, but we need that kind of support.
Thank you. So building on the fact that you were, in many instances, one of few, if not the only, you also mentioned participating in a lot of diversity and inclusion work, because in some instances you might have been the first person of color on the board, and so there needed to be some work in those arenas. And there was a simulation exercise called the Insider Outsider, and the importance of making sure everyone's voice was heard and what it feels like to be shut out of the conversation. And can you talk about how that is shaped when you're leading teams, that experience and learning?
It's so important. I mean, it was part of that exercise is talking about, when you look at a glacier, only 10% of the glacier is above the surface and 90% is below. And you don't know all of the 90% of a person. And we tend to, a human nature, we tend to judge people just by the pure look as to what's in front of us, or a certain behavior as to what's occurring beside us without knowing anything about this person. And then we come to assumptions. And so as a leader, you have to make sure that you, one, are getting to know your colleagues, your employees, et cetera, a little deeper than just what's on the resume and who you're talking to in front of you. Because on any given day, someone is woken up to an issue, a personal issue, and we don't know what it is. They could have just lost a loved one, or their husband or spouse could have lost their job, or what have you. And so when people's demeanor and their attitudes shift from what it's okay to say, "Are you okay? Is there anything that I can do?" So you seem to be a little down today. Or if they're jubilant, "Hey, what are we celebrating?" People want to be heard, and they want to know that they matter. And that's my approach with anyone that I've worked with.
So you're trying to make sure that they are part of those conversations, and and they know that you see them and they have shown up.
Absolutely. I may have a title, but I don't accomplish the company organization does not succeed without everybody's input. And I'm a person that when I come into the building, I'm walking the floor saying hello to people. I start in the mail room and work my way up. And that, that puts a smile on people's face. They stand up a little taller, their chest starts to stick out because they know that they actually matter. It's not the title that matters, it's the individual that's putting all the pieces together to make the bigger pie work.
So let's talk about your work with the Harlem Junior Tennis and Education Program. So this organization offers participants opportunities and support to help them reach their highest potential through tennis, character building, and education. So talk about what you have done there, some of the success stories, and some of the experiences that you've had.
Yes, so I started in towards the end of 2005, and it was an organization that was working in the red at the time. And the board needed to make a change. They were either going to let the program go under after 35 years, or they were going to make a change and try to save it and go in the other direction. And so it was a situation that I had never run a program. Of course, I had been a coach, so I knew how to coach players, but just to be able to come in and actually take over a budget that was minimal and was in the red, how do you figure that out? And so I was able to turn the numbers with our participants gaining more. We went from 79 students, I think, to almost 1,200 students in about a year and a half, just forging partnerships with our local community centers and schools, et cetera. And we were over capacity for what we could do. And then I had to figure out how to scale back without hurting any feelings. And then we just kind of blossomed from there. So from a staff of 4 to a staff of 14 over time, and really building and forging the partnerships. We were just the Harlem Junior Tennis Program that had an after school homework program, if you will. And we did some SAT prep before I got there. But I realized the importance of education for these kids and that we needed to be tennis and education. So I went about changing the name of the organization to officially Harlem Junior Tennis and Education Program, Inc. So we offer tennis, education, and wellness components. And it's really focusing on building the whole child. We want to make sure that these kids are progressing to be successful in life, not just in tennis. More importantly, we want to make sure they have the opportunity to go to college and earn a college scholarship, either through tennis and or academics. And not everybody is talented enough to get a college scholarship in tennis, but what we can do is make sure that they're prepared mentally and with their education to enter college. And having tennis on their CV for 6, 7, 8 years shows that that child has commitment, they're dedicated, they have discipline, et cetera, which is the type of student that any higher education institution would love to have at their campus.
And I will say, for all of you who haven't had a chance to read the book yet, she's got some great success stories that come out throughout the chapters of, the students themselves, ones that have impacted you, personally with their stories, and also inspired you. I saw a lot of that too.
Yeah, and that's just, I think I named maybe 2 or 3, and those are, there are many more, but it just shows the type of work that we do, and really it's our entire staff. Many of our staff are alums. They grew up in the program, they went to college, they've done their thing, and now they're coming back because they know how it impacted them. And it is an after-school program, so some of them have other jobs during the day, and they come and teach in the evening, and or they're professional tennis coaches, and this is a passion for them because that's just how impactful programs like ours are, and our program in particular. And
awesome.
We survive on donations, so please make sure you go to our website, hjtep.org, if you want to learn more about our program.
It's in the chat already. That is the perfect segue for my next question, which is, you mentioned how giving back is addictive to you. And I run a community leadership program preparing, the Howard Countyans to be better give their time, talent, and treasure. And can you share how you approach this and how you generate that understanding and passion in those that you support and mentor? What are you doing to inspire people to have that same giving back and passion as you do?
Well, I was very fortunate that I had great role models in my parents. I watched them volunteer to a number of organizations or be on boards in a number of organizations. And as a small child, I used to have to go to some of their club meetings or board meetings and sit in the back. It was back in the day when you could do that. And so I think it was just something that was instilled in me. But I know for me in the sport of tennis, I wouldn't be where I am had I not had people reaching out their hand and pulling me forward. The generosity of coaches that, gave me lessons for free or picked me up to make sure that I could get to practice on time or to a tournament match if my parents couldn't get me there, etc. So because of that experience, I say that it's my duty to make sure that I do the same for the next generation. And so when I walk into the facility or used to walk into the facility in the early days and kids would get excited and call me coach, Coach Cat, just brought such a big smile to my face and warmed my heart because I knew I was impacting them. And if I was away, I commentated a lot. If I was away and came back and they saw me on television, mostly on the tennis channel, hey, I saw you on TV. That's so cool. It was a way that I knew that I was impacting and that they missed me when I wasn't there, and love to have the conversation. So it's important for everyone to be able to associate themselves with some type of nonprofit organization if they can. And because these kids really need leaders like everyone on this webinar to reach out and pull someone forward.
Thank you. That's going to end up as a soundbite on my website probably, because that's what we do is we try to inspire everybody to be out on boards and councils, commissions, and whatever it takes to help make this a great community. So back to your, being a competitive, professional athlete, winning is obviously the preferred outcome, but loss is also a part of the process of competition. So what are some of the personal or professional lessons that you've taken, not just from the winning moments, but in times where you've lost a match?
Well, for those of us who aren't top 5 in the world, and singles in particular, lose a lot more than you win. And in particular, when you're developing and you're getting into a sport, you're going to lose a lot more than you win. And you learn more from your losses. You have to go back to the drawing board. What did I not do well? What do I need to work on? Oh, I missed too many first serves. I've got to work on my serve. I missed too many balls into the net. I've got to work on topspin. Whatever that might be, you have to go back to work harder to get better. Well, it's the same thing that we do in life and in business, et cetera. When you don't get that contract or you don't get that job, what could you do better next time? And you go back to the drawing board, you go back to your team and say, okay, we've got to work harder. We have to be more creative. We have to be more innovative, whatever that might be. And so when you win, what do? We celebrate. And you very seldom reflect on what you did well to get there. So you do, but you don't think about it. You think about it that day or maybe the next day when you're talking about what you've accomplished, and then you move on. But when you don't win, you're dwelling on it, right? And you're focusing on it and you're trying to figure it out, and you spend a lot more time. And so that's what I talk about in the book, about owning your losses as well as owning your successes, and being humble about your successes, but learning from your losses.
And I did also glean from that, when you talked about that, is how important it is to move on and not dwell there.
It is important because, so when I say dwell, you're dwelling on it, that day and the next day when you're perhaps with your team and you're discussing it to say, okay, what are our next steps? And then once you decide what the next steps are, then you're moving forward. You've let that one go. Okay, that didn't go well, but now we've got the next opportunity, and that's the part of moving on.
Awesome. So you were 6 when you started to play tennis. And to young girls who are stepping onto the clay court and looking to win that match, what do you say to them?
At 6, it's really about having fun. As a kid, I think any child that we put in our sport of tennis or any sport, the ultimate goal is that they're having fun. Because if they're having fun, they can enjoy the process better. They can enjoy the process of developing. Too often, when you're winning so early that you only focus on winning and you forget about the development part because you don't want to change anything because what you're doing is working. But every day, every week, every month, every year, as your body develops as a child, things are changing and you have to change your game. And so there are more players. We did a survey probably 20 years ago that we had more players that were number one uh, in their age group at 14 that at 20 was not playing the game because they did not
Yeah.
develop. They stuck with what they knew and the game passed them by. And then they didn't enjoy the game anymore. So for me, I always say when I was young, I always wanted to I wanted to go home with the big trophy. I didn't want the little trophy. I wanted the bigger trophy. In order for me to get the big trophy, I had to win. But in my mind, it wasn't about winning. It was about accomplishing that goal of getting the big trophy, and winning was a part of the process. So I think it helped me a lot more um, in not so much focusing on the winning, but focusing on the end result of what that got me so that I could get to the next week and the next tournament, et cetera.
So your email signature, you mentioned in the book, is embrace the path that you lead and enjoy the battle. That is quite a challenging statement. How do we grow and succeed, help more people rise up, and show that strength of leadership without being combative, which seems to be a real challenge in our current times?
Well, when I started using that phrase or quote, I think about we're not responsible for where we are born, right? We don't control
Mhm.
where we're born or what environment we grow up in as individuals. But as we go down, once we choose that path, whatever that path is, we have to embrace, as opposed to the journey, the battle, because there are going to be so many obstacles that you have to overcome and go around to stay on that path of success, if that's the path that you chose. And so I choose the word battle because every day that you're working hard, you're battling with yourself, you're battling with your colleagues, you're battling with the proposal, whatever that might be. But if we embrace the path and enjoy the battle, then we can be a lot more successful than if we are struggling and always fighting with that path.
So this is National Women's Month. And can you address you can have it all mentality out there for women and the expectation that we're going to have a successful career, we're going to have love, we're going to have family, we're going to have the perfect little house with the puppies and the a couple cars and the daffodils blooming outside. And you seem to sacrifice a lot to get to where you are today. And what do you want to tell other women here tonight?
I think as long as we strive for a goal, then we can achieve it. The statement of having it all, no one has it all. The most successful businessman does not have it all. He's lacking something somewhere. And it doesn't make you happy to have it all because that's a lot on your plate. So I think we need to embrace the challenges that we have, embrace the choices that we make along the way to be successful. If it's successful being a mom, if it's successful being, the carpool person, if we're successful in our job, we have to decide the importance of what all is. Do we really want to have it all? Or do we want to be able to give some of it away to someone else and take that burden? And I don't want to even call it a burden because I think, I'm not a parent, but I have a lot of kids. And it's just a matter of watching my families and my parents and my friends struggle on a daily basis with particularly now with virtual learning, the challenges are enormous. And the sacrifices that we make are choices. So as opposed to calling them sacrifices, it's a choice. And once we make that choice, we have to live with it and we have to accept it. And then we have to make the best of it to be happy.
So, what goals would you like to see accomplished in tennis, nationally and internationally, in the next 5 years?
Well, we've had a great boom in our sport in the last year, thanks to the pandemic. A lot of people got on the tennis courts that had never played before. A lot of people picked up a racket that hadn't picked up one in, a decade or so. Would love to see that trend continue with people staying in the sport. You don't have to be, we're not asking people to get into the sport to be a professional tennis player. We just want you to go out and meet people, have fun, get some exercise, get some fresh air if you're outdoors. But even if you're indoors, it's just, we have to get those endorphins going and get that exercise. It's a great sport, social aspect of it, which is why our numbers grew, because we're technically socially distanced, right, on the court. Uh, would love to see our juniors really focus on the development part as opposed to the winning part. Is a lot of stress on our young players. When with tennis being on 24/7, they aspire to be like the best on television, and they're giving up a lot. But parents are giving up a lot to help these kids go down that path. And a lot of parents know early on that their child doesn't have that kind of talent. So understanding our sport better. But when you go to the professional side, I'd love to see more parity and equality for the men and women. We have equal prize money for our Grand Slam events. The US Open was the first one to do so back in 1973, 5 years after the Open era. And Wimbledon was the last one in 2012. So, but the tours, the WTA tour and the ATP tour, there's still a gap as to what the same tier level type tournaments are. The men are getting paid a lot more than the women, and so I would love to see that parity across the board on the professional level.
Well, I have a big smile on my face because I jotted down, if I can, I wanted to bring up the fact that on Tuesday, ESPNW shared a letter from Georgia Tech women's basketball coach regarding the disparity in the sport between the NAACP women's tournament and the men's. And yesterday was Equal Pay Day, and Megan Rapinoe testified before Congress about gender discrimination. So you're a former sports commentator, and you know that bigger picture than just tennis. You know what's going on and the challenges that we face in this arena. And there seems to be, in tennis actually is kind of held up as one of the places where there is more equity, even though, what you just mentioned shows that it's only in certain places and times. So what do you think about this current conversation that's going on?
Well, it's important, and I applaud the women that are stepping up in the other sports. When you look at maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago already, when the U.S. women's soccer team first brought up the disparity of inequities of what they were getting paid. These are our World Cup champions over and over again, and what they were getting paid compared to the men was embarrassing. Really, they were winning more, playing more games, and still yet getting less than the men. And so they're the ones that really kind of stood up and started fighting for this, which continues with Megan Rapinoe speaking today. And then now you see the U.S. hockey's team, et cetera. Female athletes work just as hard, if not harder, than the men. It's because we have to, because we have to be our best to be seen. And when you look at the disparities of what's happened in March Madness this week, last week, and you can't say that it's an oversight, because when you look at the weight room in particular, I'd rather that room not have had anything in it. And they said, we got behind, it's coming, when it was brought up. But the fact that they had the audacity to put a rack of dumbbells in there and some pads in comparison to what the men had, I mean, it was embarrassing. And they rectified it. They righted the wrong, but it's something that they will need to look at long and hard going forward as to how they're representing and treating these women. I mean, even the swag bags, Not even close. And so it's we're still a long way. As close as we are, we're so far away. And it's just going to take time, energy, and new leaders who really care about the women to to come in and start to right the ship. And that's going to take time.
So I'm going to make sure that we get to some of the questions that our audience this evening have put into the Q&A box here. So the first one is, what advice do you have for Black women who are also the first in their career field or position?
Well, I would say, first of all, embrace it and be proud of it. It's, we're not proud to be the first, but when we're there, we have to make sure that we're not the last. And that's something that Madam Vice President Kamala Harris stated very well in her speeches. And it's something that I have stated before. I may be the first, but I don't want to be the last. And so you have the power and are empowered to make that happen, because you're in positions to be an advocate for someone else, particularly when positions arise. And if you are in a leadership position, then you definitely you are empowered to make sure that there's a pipeline that starts to come into the organization, particularly if you're in HR roles. One of the things that most companies have added is the diversity, equity, and inclusion position in their companies in the last year, following the George Floyd incident and others that we all witnessed. And these are things that have been going on for years, but now that the power of that little cell phone and video is coming out, everyone is saying, wow, this really is happening. And the fact that we've been crying for years of these injustices. So if you are that only woman or that first Black woman in your role, make sure you're not the last, and do whatever it takes to be the best that you can be.
And help make that door open a little wider, and make that transition a little easier for those coming after you.
Yeah, I always say,
there's a couple of questions.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. No.
I say, when the door opens,
say,
you get your foot in, don't just have the foot in. You want to be able to keep pushing it ajar to make it wider. So, yes.
Absolutely. So there's a couple of questions about tennis related things. And since you are really well versed in this arena, so how different do you think this year's US Open will be from recent years prior to 2020? Do you think the spectators will come back en masse?
That's a very good question. I mean, this is still going to be a government issue and a CDC issue. It's something that they continue to look at on a daily basis. We are hoping to have some fans here in 2021. I doubt if we'll have a full slate of fans on the grounds. I'm certain that masks will probably still be required, and I believe they should be, because people will say they've been had a vaccine that haven't, and so just for the safety of everyone else. I mean, listen, we're accustomed to it now, so it's almost like tying your shoes these days. But hopefully in 2022 onward, we can get back to really enjoying the full entertainment that the US Open produces.
So there's also a question regarding who are the next generation U.S. men and women that you are most excited about?
Oh boy. I'll start with the women, because that's the easiest one. I mean, obviously you have Coco Gauff, who just turned 16, who is really raising the torch from the American side. Another youngster in Katie McNally, which is Coco's doubles partner. These girls are extremely talented, and there's so much room for growth and development. And to see where they are now, sky's the limit for where they're going. We have so many other American women out there. Many of them are in their 20s, mid-20s now. So we have a full slate of them, but there's some other youngsters, Haley Baptiste, Katrina Scott, that are coming up, Ann Lee. The list goes on the girls' side. On our men's side, we're struggling to get to the upper echelon of the rankings. Tommy Paul has been doing really well. Riley Opelka, Taylor Fritz, Francis Tiafo, Michael Moe, Marcos Giron. There's so many men that are now starting to step up, but it's going to take time for them to really break into that top 20 and then ultimately the top 10.
So there's a question regarding being a mother of 2 young children that hopes to continue playing tennis, but she often sees moms dropping out of the game to spend more time on child rearing. And can you comment on your thoughts of this phenomenon and any advice you would give to someone like me who wants to stay in the game? And she's a Black woman who's played tennis from the age of 3 with her sister. And they used to be called Venus and Serena in high school.
Of course, you know what? Don't give up. You start at a young age, so let's get your
Yeah.
kids in the sport and get them in the sport at the same facility. I mean, if possible, for young kids, so that they can have their time with their coach in their little group while you go and have your time with your friends playing. So there are ways that you can stay in the sport while raising your child. You just may have to cut back on the hours that you might be playing a day, from 2 hours to one or whatever that might be. But don't give up. I know there's a lot of people we lose. There's a gap between the ages of 25 and 40 for that very reason of raising their family. And then they get back into the sport and start playing leagues, etc. So I'm not sure if you're in that age bracket, but find a way to stay in it and get your child. And if not tennis, get them in another activity during the same time that you don't have to be there so that you can have your time for yourself.
What is the most important, what shot, excuse me, is the most important for amateur players to have in their arsenal to be successful?
The serve is the only shot that you have total control over. You're the one that's standing there, you're in position. The only thing that is affecting it are the elements, perhaps, where the sun is in the sky or the wind. That's the one stroke that you can actually go out and practice on your own. You don't need anyone else to go practice your serve. And if you can hold serve, you have a great chance of breaking your opponent. So that's the one shot that I um, advise you to work on more. But also, work on your net game. There's too many shots and opportunities where you can move forward and finish the point on an easy high ball, and you're just kind of standing there and waiting back on the baseline, waiting for it.
Well, that was one of your signature approaches when you were playing. And so that ties into, you've had an opportunity to play against many tennis greats and have successful, doubles partnership. Of all of your matches, which were some of the most memorable ones?
The most memorable doubles matches would be the ones where I actually beat Martina Navratilova and Pam Shriver, or Martina Navratilova and anybody. I mean, the greatest player, of all time, greatest doubles player for sure. And I've had the pleasure of having some victories over her, or she and Pam together. I would say, I've had some great wins in singles, but some of my most memorable matches have actually been losses. I've lost to Helena Sukova when she was like number 3 in the world, like 6-7, 7-6, 6-7. Heartbreaking loss, but it was one of those matches that I felt I did everything right and just missed an opportunity here or there. And losing to Chris Evert in my rookie year in 3 sets, big learning experience from that one. But there's a lot of matches that I can recall and that were great, but I'll leave it to those.
So can you talk a little bit about your many connection points and relationship with Billie Jean King and how she has influenced you?
Wow, the great Billie Jean King. I've been so blessed and so fortunate to have a personal relationship with her. Literally just had lunch with she and Alana about 2 weeks ago. To catch up after a year, probably at least a year in person, obviously because of COVID. We text, occasionally just to check on each other, but it really started, I think, when I was in college, of meeting her and getting a chance to be on the court with her. She came to my class at Northwestern University to speak, And it just kind of grew from there. But this is a woman that I've admired for so many years, and understanding what she represented, and how, if not for her and 8 other women, that might not have had a professional tour to play on. And that's the original 9, celebrating 50 years last year of the WTA tour. And that they, as a group, the first time a group will be inducted into the International Tennis Hall of Fame this year, this summer. So, but Billie Jean is someone, will ask you a gazillion questions. She'll never tell you how to do it. She'll ask you the questions to get you to think about how you should do something. And I've learned a lot from her, so I'm very grateful.
Thank you. Do you have suggestions for mid-level USTA players to get involved in volunteer or leadership roles?
Absolutely. The USTA is a volunteer organization. A lot of people don't realize that. And there's so many opportunities to get involved in a local program. Go on the website of your section. We have 17 sections. I'm not sure where you all are residing. Probably most of you are in the Mid-Atlantic, down in the DC area. But there's so many programs in DC, Maryland, Virginia, that you could get involved with in volunteering in some capacity. And it's not necessarily on the court. It could be behind the scenes of these programs that are trying to grow. So please reach out. And it doesn't have to be tennis. I mean, it could be some girls program, some leadership program for girls where you could share your expertise with these ladies. It could be an etiquette program. I mean, you'd be surprised how many of our young girls, don't know where the fork goes or the knife goes, because they're eating takeout every day. They're stopping at McDonald's. They've never had a full complement of cutlery, or tableware or glasses. And so these are things that you can actually offer these programs to put something together like that, so that these girls can understand the importance of etiquette, of hygiene, of standing up proper. It's all the different things that many of our working moms, particularly if they're in lower income families, just don't have the time to do.
Yep. So I didn't actually highlight the fact that not only were you the youngest and the first Black woman to chair the USTA board, but you were also the first person to serve 2 consecutive terms, one from 2015 to 16, and one from 2017 to 18. And what do you see as your most important legacy for tennis during those terms?
I think the most important would be the fact that I represented everyone. So I embraced all, and particularly people of color, and to be able to speak about experiences that no one before me could speak about, and to be able to truly embrace a group of people that no one understood how to embrace. And so the diversity efforts that we had under my leadership were huge. Really focused on a Hispanic initiative, which is the fastest growing demographic in America, to try to bring them into our sport more in our Hispanic and Latino X communities, because no one was really going, no one knew how to communicate. And so one of the things that I was able to teach people is that you have to send the right messenger in with the right message. And in order for people to trust, we had an issue with trust. And I think I was able to bring that back to the forefront in our sport, but also to be able to add elements that made our sport more fun to be engaged with. So, uh, I would say my parting gift or legacy from my term was really getting the Althea Gibson statue approved, that was erected the following year in 2019, to really be able to bring her legacy to the forefront, and honor a true icon and a shero of mine.
Do you feel that the work you did, especially with trying to advance the USTA's outreach into the Latinx and the Black communities, do you feel like they have carried that on since your term?
Yeah, I would say that we've probably had some stumbling blocks. We actually, our chief diversity and inclusion officer left towards in my last year, and another one was not hired literally until this year. So there was a gap there, and where the focus was in that space. We also, the CEO at the time, retired, and then we had a new CEO come in to inherit COVID. So there were a lot of things that were happening, that probably stunted that growth and development in that area. But I'm confident that we will get back to where we were and beyond.
Do you make some really important connections between sports and education and how these pursuits can inform and also build upon each other? And can you talk a little bit about, your experience as a collegiate athlete and what that taught yourself and how important it is, again, in that work that you've been doing with your program that also has tied in education along with tennis?
Well, my parents were both teachers, so you understand how important education was in our family, and that is excuse me, that is something that stays in the back of my mind all the time. So playing at Northwestern on a team taught me how to be a team player, because tennis is an individual sport. And so I knew that I was playing not just for myself, but my team and for my school when I was at Northwestern. And it's a time that I cherish, and look back on often. I still keep in touch with my team members from school. And so it's fun when we do reconnect. And if you fast forward and bring it to the local community organization that I run, it's imperative that these kids have education to be able to fall back on, because they are just starting their lives and their careers. And so to get them to the next level of higher education in college, we put kids from Ivy League schools down to community college. It doesn't matter, as long as they can go and further themselves, further their education, they have a chance of being successful in whatever arena that is that they choose, and that path that they choose to go down. And so therefore, education is very important for me, particularly going into leadership positions.
I want to say thank you so much for your time with us tonight. You have just inspired us all with your experiences and how you were able to really put them into the book in such a way to help connect it to how we can use this in our lives as professional and as leaders, and also even as those parents that are out there. So, Allie, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much to both of you. That was a really amazing conversation. I took a ton of notes. That was some amazing content and some good advice to share. And I really appreciate you spending your evening with us. And thank you to everyone who tuned in from home. We'll be sending out an email in the morning with a link to a survey and some links that we shared in the chat, just so you have those readily at hand. We'll share a link to the Harlem Tennis Group and other links we had in the chat. So thank you all so much. Thank you, Katrina. Thank you, Stacy. And thank you to Rohini, our production manager, for helping us with everything tonight. Thank you all for coming, and have a wonderful night.
Bye-bye. Thank you.